Yo, welcome to Dev Brew. This is Dev Brew. This is Games Over More Coffee. Welcome. Today we're doing a video about Lucent Bounds. If you saw the thumbnail, how cool is that? Lucent Bounds is a game that was submitted to us by Pear Tree. Pear Tree is a longtime viewer of the channel. Thank you, Pear Tree, for submitting your game. I actually played this game before when you posted it on our Discord, so that was really cool. If you are not Pear Tree, by the way, you can submit your own game to me, not via Discord, but there's a link in the description, gamesover.coffee. You can go to there, submit a game, and check it out. I checked out this game already on, like I said, Discord, but it was because he was just posting it for fun. And so he was like, hey, check out my game. And some of the people played it, and I played it, and I thought it was pretty cool. But now I'm giving some critique about it, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Let's get on to the gameplay, shall we? I have to switch my camera here. Oh, wow, beautiful music. Let's see. There we go. Alrighty, gameplay. Yeah, there we are. This is the gameplay. And this right here is me. So, yeah, this is Lucent Bounds by Pear Tree. I really dig this aesthetic. I like this a lot. Just going from my notes here, it says submit your game, link in description. So that's what we already did. So first we're going to go over the good stuff of this game. This is super my kind of game. Precision platformers, I didn't realize were a thing. As you can tell right here, look how amazing I am at this genre. I didn't know precision platformers were actually a favorite of mine until I played Celeste. And Celeste, I'm dying so many times. I was trying to figure out the controls here. I was playing. This is actually on the Steam Deck, by the way, this footage, which was interesting. It was fun to do. Anyway, I played Celeste, and Celeste became one of my favorite genres of game to play, and I didn't even realize that was a thing. I didn't know precision platformers were like something I was so interested in. I guess I should have known from playing like Kaizo Mario levels that I really loved playing those. But yeah, this is basically that, but in 3D, and I thought that was really interesting because I'd never seen something like that before. Love the idea of putting that kind of gameplay into a 3D atmosphere. The other thing that I love so much about this game is the openness of everything. So it looks like it's kind of a what's the word? A concept, just kind of a concept that we're exploring, and it's like untextured level assets basically. Your cube that you're playing, or you're playing as a cube, so that's for one. But your cube is textured a little bit. You can also switch skins if you want to. The water is pretty normal. Actually, the water looks really good. I really like the water. Anyway, but everything looks pretty rough, and I just like the idea of showing like a pretty simple way of doing level. I don't know why, but I really like that idea of just having just naked assets. I think maybe because it has such a minimal feel to it, and I'm really drawn to minimalism because, especially in games, it highlights the game mechanics. So, really interesting stuff. The other thing was the music in here was really good. Gave this really chill atmosphere, and I love the idea that there's no enemies in the game. Basically, it's just actually we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so that's what I like about it. Going into the critique side, what I want to set the context here, where I got to in the game. There's these little orbs that you collect in. If I can show you, I don't know if I got to it in here. Yeah, so there's these little orbs that's spinning around me. So you collect those later on in the game, and what they are different types of movement mechanics. So I think the point is to collect 4 of them, and then to get to a certain place or whatever. I didn't get 4 of them. I got 2 of them, so that's where I was. Okay, all of that out of the way. Let's get into the actual point of the whole video, which is critique. So thank you, Pear Tree, for submitting this game, and I know this wasn't really a game that you were initially looking for feedback for, so thank you for throwing me a bone, basically, and just saying, hey, I know you're looking for games. Here's a game you can do. So I really appreciate that. I had fun, with this game, and I had fun trying to figure out what it was all about. So when you submitted this game, you said that you wanted it challenging but rewarding, and that's always a thing that I think is really difficult to define in game design terms, because whenever you think about something that's really rewarding for the player, it matters how much effort they put in, and that can be different depending on whatever game it is. So, like, for example, the classic example that I can think of challenging but rewarding is Dark Souls. And I hate Dark Souls. I hate playing that game so much, but I understand why people would find it really rewarding. I've played, I think, maybe a third of that game, Dark Souls. I don't know how far I got. I got to Ornstein and Smo, or whatever the guy's names are. But I don't know. I got to that boss, and I played that much of the game, and I just hated it. But while I was playing it, I didn't really find any of the mechanics rewarding. I'm not talking about this game, I'm talking about Dark Souls. Dark Souls I did not find rewarding, but it's because I didn't find the effort that I put in part of my desire. I found more of it as like a test of skill, and I didn't really like doing that skill. It takes a lot of methodical type of gameplay, and I'm just really not into that kind of gameplay. The games that I do find really rewarding, however, are things like precision platformers, like Celeste, for example. Celeste I found extremely rewarding, and after dying 200 times on a certain level or whatever, finally getting through and just going like, yes. But I think what causes that rewarding feeling that you're like, yes, is because you've put so much of yourself into the game, because you've put so much of your own desire to present your skill, basically. Like in Celeste, there was this really, really hard time of getting through all of these mechanics, but you knew you could do it. Of course, this is coming from someone who loves these types of games. From someone who doesn't love those types of games, it wouldn't work. But someone who really connects with those kinds of mechanics can get into there and say, I want to be able to show people or show myself how amazing I am at doing this. And then you find out that you suck as you're doing it, but then you keep going and keep going until you actually get into the rhythm of things, and it turns out you're amazing at the end, right? And that gets that really rewarding feeling. So there's that. So that being said, was this game challenging but rewarding? I think in a sense, yes, or just basically yes. I do want to say that this game was challenging and rewarding. Nappy Hill, what is the core mechanics of this game? This person says in chat here. The core mechanics are it's just a precision platformer. It's where you are, it's just, what is it? It's just hopping, floating, and then you can see there's a little zoom there, right there, little zoom, and wall jumps. And basically it. And those things all mixed together kind of create the core mechanic here. But the idea of it being rewarding, again, speaks to the player's ability to do what they want to do. And the player's ability in here really, really is about measurement. It's because every precision platformer is about trying to figure out where it is that you're going and how you're going to get there. And some games get it perfect, like what I would say Mario 64, although that's not really a precision platformer, but Celeste, I think, gets it perfect. The idea that you can look at the game, immediately know what you're doing wrong versus right, and be able to adapt to different types of challenges that you're facing. And in this game, I don't know if it's so easy to adapt to the errors that you're making. For me, I died a whole lot, as you can see right here, making the same type of error. And usually, I would learn pretty fast on those things. So, like, for example, when I'm playing Celeste, I really should have brought some Celeste gameplay into here, but when I'm playing Celeste, I know exactly when I've failed in that game. And say, for example, I'm trying to use wind to my advantage while jumping over various, spikes or whatever. Whenever I say hit the spikes at the end of a segment, I know that it's because my trajectory isn't correct. So I have to keep trying to find that same trajectory over and over. But I know that's what I'm focusing on, and that's what I'm trying to adapt to. Versus something like this, where in this game, because of its 3D space, weirdly enough, it's really difficult to measure your distance between things. So I usually kept dying. I knew why I was dying, but I usually kept dying for the same reason without me trying to adapt to it. And that was really, really difficult to try to figure out what it was that I was doing wrong. It wasn't super aggravating to someone like me because I really like these types of mechanics. I really connect with them. But to someone who doesn't connect with these mechanics, I'm sure they would just rage quit, immediately. But precision platformers are kind of that way. You just kind of have to deal with it. It's kind of like super involved turn-based RPGs, right? People who are not into that gameplay are going to see all of this, say like FTL. If you were to play FTL and you are just not connected with that type of gameplay, you're just going to immediately quit, right? And that's fine. That's just, that's the way some games are. There's the idea of also trying to, make these games more accessible for a mass audience, but that's not necessarily what I'm going to be talking about. It's mostly just about this measurement issue. So I think really the point of measurement here, the reason why it feels a little more finicky than a game like Celeste or even a game like these other games over here that I was playing, Panzerball, which is one, which is it's a 3D platformer that has to do with you rolling around as a ball and hopping off of walls and stuff. What makes it different from something like that or even Cyberhook is just the idea that you can measure, your distances. Both in Cyberhook and Panzerball, you're both you're measuring distance constantly. Nappy Hill says, yes, it seems a bit slow to solve the logic. Yeah, it is. The idea behind the 3D nature of this kind of thing and constantly trying to measure is always different between each game. And for this game, it's really settled on the level design. And I know that was the thing you said, Pear Tree, that you said was not so good or that you weren't very proud of in this game was because the level design is basically 2D. And I know you said that you watched my Sonic video and you said you had a lot of the same errors because Sonic basically creates a 2D version or a 3D version of 2D space, and that's what you did here. And Sonic can get a little bit away with it because Sonic is just about going forward, and it doesn't really have to do with platforming. Whereas your game is specifically about platforming, so it really takes that measurement and just puts it on max, right? You have to measure every single moment. You have to know exactly what you're doing. And I think to your credit, you did a lot of really good stuff here. The idea that you're putting guides in here is awesome. Like this little area here, my cursor can go. The line that extends from below your cube, and just sits there the entire time. You can see it all the time whenever you're jumping. I think that's great. I think that speaks to your design abilities and shows that you were thinking about this kind of measurement. The idea that guide is there when you shoot also. The idea that there's an arc when you're doing your swinging mechanic. If I can find right there. It flows together pretty dang well. So I'm glad that was actually on your mind as you were trying to figure out exactly how to design this game. Nappy Hill says, I'm new to game development, so sorry I ask questions. This is my second year. Yeah, dude, it's all good. I mean, that's what this is for. So please ask away. I love this type of stuff. I'm glad you're studying game development. That's really cool. I love that kind of stuff. That's what this is all about. So the measurement. So going into, I wanted to talk about something I did that was really peculiar. While I was playing this game, I tried something that I thought might tweak the type of control that I have. So in Panzerball, when I was playing this game, I just discovered this game and I thought it was so much fun. When you see, let's see, so this is very much a 3D platformer. This is what this game is all about. And as you can see, when you're rolling, you're going pretty fast, but you can tell where you're going to go. And you can see there's a wall jump that's very easy to do. Everything's very easy to see and measure as you're going. There's my camera coming back. There it goes. And what makes this different from something like, from Pear Tree's game here, from Lucent Bounds, is that you have a constantly rotating camera. And I know that's not the only thing that's happening here, but the constantly rotating camera, the camera that's behind the ball at all times, is very much, a part of the measurement of this game. That's what makes it playable. Same with Cyberhook, right? Cyberhook is a first-person platforming game, much like Portal, where you have platforming but in first person, and they do it pretty well because everything is designed to, be seen in front of you or seen below you or above you, but it's all kind of in this line kind of mentality, and you can get away with that in first person, but with third person, you need more something like this with a camera that's constantly following. So my dog is looking at me right now. Go on. My dog checks up on me every now and then. You still here? Just making sure you're still alive. Okay, so anyway, with that being said, the whole camera thing, I tried playing this game. This is so funny. I did an opposite thing. So instead of doing, what was it, emulating a controller on a keyboard and mouse, I tried to emulate, reverse. Anyway, doesn't matter. Most people try to play a game, on a controller by emulating a keyboard. I played this game that was made for the controller, and I tried emulating the buttons on a keyboard and mouse to see if I could create the same type of rotating camera effect. And it didn't really work all that well. So as you can see right here, this is me. Let's see if we can get to a part here. This is me still trying to figure out the controls because the emulation wasn't perfect. But right here, this is me playing on the keyboard and mouse, and this game is not built for that. And I'm trying to rotate the camera as I'm continuing, and you can see something that's happening, and that's I'm not rotating the camera a whole lot, and that speaks to level design. It turns out that this game not only is utilizing 2D space in a 3D area, but it's actually like developed for that kind of sensibility. So here, as I'm trying to rotate the camera as I'm moving, it doesn't really help. It doesn't really work, and it's because all of the moves that were programmed into here, all of the things that they're doing, are basically just locked onto one area, one axis. You can see that when I'm swinging, it's all just in one axis. When I'm floating, I don't have much agility when I'm turning. When I jump, it's just in one single arc. So everything is very much meant for a 2D type of feeling, for a 2D type of precision. And of course, that's what you need for a 2D platformer, 2D precision platforming. So that's what it was. So it makes sense. And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because Pear Tree, you talked about how your level design was very two-dimensional, and it is. That's just the way it is. However, something that was really, really interesting was the tutorial. The tutorial for this the tutorial for this game is amazing. It's so good. So the first part here that I kept dying over and over, took me 8 deaths to try to figure out how to float. That was my own fault. But you can see right here, there is no direction right here. It's completely open. You can there's a little bit of direction telling you where to go right here. There's these platforms that don't go anywhere. They just kind of go up and then down. But it's a grid. It's a perfectly centered grid. It's a grid where the player comes over here, tries to figure out what this is all about, sees a pit of water, and they're like, okay, well, I'm not going to go that way. And from there can decide wherever to go. They can go to this quadrant, the other one, or whatever, and there's 4 quadrants to choose from. And this is 3D open world platforming, basically. And this was the best, even though it is technically in a 2-dimensional space right here when you're going, because you're going through the center. It's not really a full-on 3D atmosphere. The idea of giving the player just a choice of where to go and say you can go wherever. That really gives me the feeling of ownership when I decide to try to figure out what's going on here. So at the moment, when I get to this, I'm trying to get to the top of this little area here, but I feel like I'm just, it's my choice too. I just feel like I'm supposed to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And when I do, then I'm rewarded for such. So I get to the top here and I find a little switch, and I'm just like, oh, this looks important, so let me hit that switch. Sure enough, it has, something happening. So I really, really, really liked that whole feeling. The feeling of, I'm going to go this way because I think it's hard, and then I was rewarded for doing so. that speaks so well to the 3D platforming mentality, or just discovery mentality, or just basic game loop mentality. I really, really like that so much. It feels much better than something later on when we have more of these really rigid 2D sections, like right here, for example. I think this is, yeah. So as you can see, I'm hopping from island to island, and it's very obvious where to go. I'm supposed to go from one island to the next, and it feels like the game is asking me to do so, whereas it's not really my choice. I do like the idea that there's not really any whole direction here, and that kind of speaks to the open world mentality. But I think having this island to island thing does constrain the movement a little bit. That's just my take on it. I do really like the openness of the tutorial level here, though, because it feels so free. It really does feel like it's driven by the player, like by myself. And in that essence, I also get to kind of teach myself the mechanics. So I thought that was really interesting. If that same mentality was copied just throughout the entire game, that would be a lot of fun. You know, if I was able to pick and choose where I wanted to go, because I felt like I wanted to, you know, that I'm not locked out of certain areas and stuff. I do like how this level in the tutorial, this little quadrant area, leads into the next part by having, if you can see in the background here, there's a big gap right here, and you can't cross that gap until you've completed all 4 quadrants. So I like that idea that there is gatekeeping there. I don't necessarily like the idea of gates all the time, but if there's like an open world sense to this whole quadrant beforehand, and then you gate, and then you get to another open world, and then you gate again, that can feel really good. Or even coming back, which I know you utilized, revisiting old areas, you can come back to get gems, you know, once you have your other moves. So that was really cool. So the one thing that I feel like the game needs more of is more of that visual measurement to try to figure out exactly how you're moving at what parts of the game. And I think that would really improve a lot of the feeling of the game, or at least improve the idea that me, the player, I'm the one making the mistakes, right? That it's someone might think that because they can't measure perfectly, they don't think about it, but they'll think, oh, this game is too hard. It's not. It's just because they can't measure perfectly. So this game would work really well in VR, I think, quite a lot. I think VR would be really, really interesting to play in here. But for visual measurement, right, so I was trying to get to an example here. So this area right here, I died so many times. And I think a lot of the times I was dying because I couldn't tell where I was within this 2D space. So you can see that these black blobs here are the things that kill you while you're going. And a lot of the times you can see that when I'm dying, that is because I misplaced my judgment of where I was in the specific area, and I kept trying to move my camera so that it was best aligned to where I could just move my camera, keep it stationary, and then continue my gameplay. But it seems like every time that I move the camera, you can see right there, like it gets really difficult to see some of these places, and it's because my camera, you know, is right here, and it's showing me, you know, this stuff is much bigger than this stuff, and it has that very depth type, or not depth. What's the camera called? Anyway, this very regular type of camera. I don't know what to call it. There's a different type of camera that I'm trying to think of here. The opposite of orthographic. The thing is that I want to be able to put the camera in an orthographic view right here, because I want to be able to measure the distance in like a 2-dimensional kind of way, because that's what, you know, you're asking me to do right here, is to go through this game very precision heavy. And so that's what I want to do, is I want to lock off all my measurement to only the things that matter. And I think the way to do that, instead of creating just an orthographic, you know, camera for basically a 2D space, instead of doing that, you could create visual measurement. And the thing that's happening right here, if you're new to this game and you don't know what's going on, I can't go around these specific pillars because there's glass walls in the way, and you just literally can't see the glass walls, and I think that's kind of a bummer. But rather than just making them darker or making them textured or something like that, I would want to create some sort of colored segments of this glass or something like that. Some sort of way to visually identify where it is height-wise that I am. And I'd want to do it with the platforms also to try to figure out where it is depth-wise that I am. So I'd be able to look at a platform, say like this platform right here, if we were to color it red on white on one side and blue on the other, or a gradient from red to white, or something like that. And then the walls, you know, can be segmented. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Yellow on the top, green on the bottom. This is just random visual measurement. It would never be something that ugly, but I imagine something like that happening so that I could visually see where I am when I'm moving. You know, I can be able to strictly identify where I'd be able to go, because as much as I love the aesthetic of the game of untextured gray stuff, it really does not speak to identification, and I can't really figure out where I am visually. You can tell with games that are very, very aesthetically extreme, I guess, for lack of a better word. There's a lot, when there's a lot of art in the game, it's very easy to see where you are versus where you're not. And I talked about this a lot with Witchbane, if you saw that video before. If you haven't, check that out. Witchbane is a great video to learn from. So anyway, much more visual identification, something to try to figure out exactly where we are, at what part of the level, and stuff like that. I just think that would be really interesting. You know, what was interesting is I kept trying to change my character also, because there's a way you can swap your skin in here. And so instead of being an untextured cube, you can be a textured cube, or a voxel-looking kind of sphere. And I thought that was really neat, but what made it neat to me was that I was able to identify which side of the cube was facing in different directions. So for example, there's a Rubik's Cube skin in here that you could change to, and it has different colored sides. And it always made me interested, because whenever I would rotate the cube, then I could see where it was I was facing. And that's really part of that visual identification that we need in this game so much, or visual measurement. So that's pretty much it. The last thing I just wanted to talk over was this 2D mentality of the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with 2D versus 3D, like having two-dimensional gameplay in your 3D game, as long as you have the proper visual measurement, as long as your design and your challenges are complementive, you know, of that kind of environment, then I think it's totally fine. For example, Super Mario 3D World is basically a two-dimensional game design. The game is in 3D. It has a lot of 3D elements in it, but the gameplay is mostly two-dimensional. There's a lot of just single-plane, single-axis types of challenges in there, and that's a really good game to study if you want to see how to merge 2D and 3D. I tried to study it a little bit before this game, but I did not have the amount of time. I haven't played that game in a very long time, but it does do very, very well. So Pear Tree, I think this is a great game. I think what you're doing is great, because it does feel really good to play, but it gets tiresome for me, because not in the same way that that mini games get tired, but I get tired primarily because I feel like on my 140th death, for example, that I haven't figured out exactly what I'm doing wrong, and that can get a little bit frustrating. And I think more visual identification would help that. So that is what we have going on. That's all we have for today. If you are a person who is watching this and you have your own game, you can submit it to me. There's a link in the description, www.gamesover.coffee. Thank you so much for watching Dev Brew. This is it. That's it. That's all we're going. That's all we're doing. So go to my main channel now. Look at some of the videos. Games Over Coffee. Go over there. Okay. Anyway, bye.